Brothers by the Brothers Grimm. There once was a king and a queen who lived together peaceably and had 12 children, who were all boys. One day the king said to his wife, "If the 13th child you are about to bear is a girl, the 12 boys must die, so that her wealth may be great and that she alone may inherit the kingdom." He had 12 coffins made and filled with wood shavings. In each one there was a little pillow. He had them taken to a locked room, gave the queen the key, and told her not to speak of them to anyone. The mother sat all day and grieved, and her youngest son, who was always with her, and whom she called Benjamin, after the Bible, said to her, "Mother dear, why are you so sad?" "Dearest child," she said, "I'm not allowed to tell you." But he gave her no peace until she unlocked the room and showed him the 12 coffins full of wood shavings. Then she said, "Dearest Benjamin, your father has had these coffins made for you and your 11 brothers. For if I give birth to a girl, you are all to be killed and buried in them." She wept as she spoke, and her son comforted her, saying, "Don't cry, mother dear. We can take care of ourselves. We'll run away." And she said, "Go into the forest with your 11 brothers. Let each of you by turns climb the highest tree you can find and keep watch. If I give birth to a boy, I shall raise a white flag on this tower, and then you may come back. But if I give birth to a girl, I shall raise a red flag, and then you must escape as fast as you can, and God keep you. Every night I shall get up and pray for you. In the winter I shall pray that you find fire to warm yourselves, and in the summer that you're not wilting in the heat." When she had given them her blessing, her sons went out into the forest. They took turns watching the tower from the top of the tallest oak tree. When 11 days had passed, and it was Benjamin's turn, he saw a flag going up, and it was not the white one, but the blood-red one, proclaiming that they should all die. When the brothers heard that, they grew angry and said, "Are we to die on a girl's account? We swear to avenge ourselves. Whenever we meet a girl, her red blood will flow." Then they went deeper and deeper into the forest, and right in the middle where it was darkest, they found an enchanted hut that no one was living in. "We will live here," they said, "and you, Benjamin, because you are the youngest and weakest, will stay home and keep house. The rest of us will go out and get food." So they went into the forest and shot hares and deer and birds and pigeons, anything that was good to eat. They brought their kill to Benjamin, who dressed and cooked the meat, and in that way they stilled their hunger. They lived in the hut for 10 years, and the time didn't seem long to them. By then, the queen's daughter had grown to be a little girl. She was good of heart and fair of face, and she had a gold star on her forehead. Once, when the big washing had been done, she saw 12 men's shirts and asked her mother, "Who do these shirts belong to? They're much too small for a father." Her mother answered with a heavy heart, "Dear child, they belong to your 12 brothers." The little girl said, "Where are my 12 brothers? This is the first I've heard of them." "God only knows where they are," said the queen. "They're out in the world wandering." Then she took the little girl and unlocked the room and showed her the 12 coffins with the wood shavings and the little pillows in them. "These coffins," she said, "were meant for your brothers, but they secretly went away before you were born." She told her how it had all come about, and the little girl said, "Mother dear, please don't cry. I shall go and look for my brothers." So she took the 12 shirts and went straight into the big forest. All day she walked, and in the evening she came to an enchanted hut. She went in and saw the young boy, who asked her, "Where have you come from and where are you going?" He was amazed to find her so beautiful, dressed like a queen and with a gold star on her forehead. She answered, "I am a king's daughter, and I'm looking for my 12 brothers, and I shall go on as far as the sky is blue until I find them." And she showed him the 12 shirts that belonged to them. When Benjamin knew she was his sister and said, "I'm Benjamin, your youngest brother," they wept for joy, and so did Benjamin, and they hugged and kissed each other ever so lovingly. But then he said, "Dear sister, there's still a hitch. Long ago, we swore that any girl who crossed our path must die, because we had to leave our kingdom on a girl's account." And she said, "I'll gladly die if it will save my 12 brothers." "No," he said, "I don't want you to die. Sit here under this tub until my 11 brothers come home. I'm sure I can win them over." She did as he had said, and at nightfalls the others came home from the hunt. Their supper was ready, and as they sat at the table eating, they asked, "What's new?" "Haven't you heard?" said Benjamin. "No," they replied. "Well," he said, "you've been out in the woods and I've stayed home, yet I know more than you." "Tell us," they cried. "Do you promise," he said, "not to kill the first girl who crosses our path?" "Yes," they all cried, "we shall spare her. Now tell us." Then he said, "Our sister is here." He lifted up the tub, and out came the king's daughter dressed like a queen. She had a gold star on her forehead and was ever so beautiful. They were all overjoyed. They hugged her and kissed her and loved her with all their hearts. From then on, she stayed in the hut with Benjamin and helped him with his work. The 11 went out into the forest and caught game and deer and birds and pigeons for them to eat. And their sister and Benjamin prepared their meals. She gathered firewood and wild plants and put the pots on the fire so that supper was always ready when the 11 came home. And she kept the house in order and made the beds up white and clean. And her brothers were always contented, and they lived together in perfect harmony. One day the 2 of them prepared a fine meal. When the others came home, they all sat down to eat and drink. They were full of joy. Now there was a little garden behind the enchanted hut, and in it there were 12 lilies. She wanted to give her brothers pleasure, so she broke off the flowers, meaning to give one to each of her brothers at supper. But no sooner had she broken off the flowers than her 12 brothers were turned into 12 ravens that flew away over the forest. And in the same moment the hut and the garden vanished. The poor girl was left alone in the wilderness, and when she looked around, an old woman was standing beside her, who said, "My child, what have you done? Why didn't you leave those 12 flowers alone? They were your brothers, and now they've been turned into ravens forever." The girl wept and said, "Is there no way of saving them?" "No," said the old woman. "In all the world there's only one way, and it's so hard that you can't hope to succeed. For you would have to keep silent for 7 years without speaking and without laughing, and if you said a single word, or if a single hour were wanting from the 7 years, all your trouble would be in vain, and that one word would kill your brothers." Then the girl said in her heart, "I know for sure that I'll save my brothers." She picked out a tall tree and climbed up in it, and there she sat knitting, and she neither spoke nor laughed. Now it so happened that a king went hunting in that forest. He had a big greyhound who ran to the tree where the girl was sitting, and he jumped up, yapping and barking. Well, that brought the king to the foot of the tree. He saw the beautiful princess with the star on her forehead, and he was so enchanted with her beauty that he called out and asked her if she would like to be his wife. In reply, she said nothing, but nodded her head a little. So he climbed the tree in person, carried her down, put her on his horse, and took her home. The wedding was celebrated with great splendor and joy, but the bride neither spoke nor laughed. After they had lived happily together for a few years, the king's mother, who was a wicked woman, began to slander the young queen. She said to the king, "That woman you brought home is no better than a beggar. Who knows what godless tricks she's up to? Even if she's dumb and can't speak, she could laugh once in a while. Anybody who doesn't laugh has a guilty conscience." At first the king refused to believe her, but the old woman kept it up so long and accused her of so many wicked things that the king finally let himself be convinced and condemned her to death. They made a big fire in the courtyard, and they were going to burn her in it. The king stood at a window and looked down with tears in his eyes, for he still loved her. She was already tied to the stake, and the fire was licking at her clothes with red tongues when the last moment of the 7 years passed. A whirring was heard. 12 ravens came flying through the air and swooped down, and the moment they touched the ground, they became her 12 brothers, for she had saved them. They broke up the fire, put out the flames, set their dear sister free, and hugged her and kissed her. And now that she was able to open her mouth and speak, she told the king why she had kept silent and never laughed. The king was glad to hear she was innocent, and they all lived happily together until they died. The wicked stepmother was tried and sentenced and put in a barrel filled with boiling oil and poisonous snakes, and she died a cruel death.